Continuing our reading in The World and Thorinn by Damon Knight, today is Chapter 7, Section 5. When the first gray head appeared, Thorinn struck it with the hilt of his sword. The head dropped, the body followed it, and with a thrust of his foot, Thorinn helped it downward. He dealt with the second in the same way, then groped for a better handhold and sprang upward, wedging himself between wall and limb. There was a crashing of leaves far below just as the next pair of demons emerged. They dived for it unhesitatingly and were gone. 3 more followed them, then 2, then many. The wall trembled as they surged out, diving in their turn. Their voices called back and forth far below. When the tree was still, except for the rattle and click of small things in the branches, Thorinn dropped to the opening again, slipped through, and stood upon the pole inside. The chamber was empty except for 2 females, who stared at him, then climbed the opposite wall with grunts of alarm. His clothing and possessions lay strewn on the floor. Thorinn descended, picked up the wall at first, and put his hand in to make sure of the magic jug, light box, and fire stick. His shoes and the cloth he had wrapped the box in were nowhere to be seen. He pulled on his shirt and breeks hastily, looped the wallet over his belt and buckled it on, thrust the sword through the belt, and the scabbard was gone. Then pulled out the light box and uncapped it. Across the chamber there were shrieks and scrambling sounds. He turned the light that way. Out of the dark mystery, the walls of the chamber sprang up brown and ordinary. He glimpsed the females clinging to each other on a high pole. Then he lowered the light beam, played it across the floor, saw his shoes at once, and put them on. He could not find the cloth or scabbard, although he looked into some woven baskets and turned over 6 of the mats that covered the floor. The carcass of the half-slaughtered animal lay on the far side of the chamber. It was smaller than he had thought, and had a blunt muzzle. From a peg on the wall hung some cords of the kind that had been used to tie him. He took one and looped it over his shoulder. High above, the light beam showed a platform. He leaped for it, found it empty except for baskets and mats. Above it was another, and here he found a mass of demon bodies huddled together along the wall, all females, some with children clinging to them. One of the children was holding something long and brown. Thorinn leaned closer, saw that it was his missing scabbard. He eased it out from between the demon child's fingers little by little. When he plucked it away, the child sighed and turned over, but did not awaken. Thorinn leaped again, and at last came to the top of a chamber, where a row of wrapped bundles hung from a cross pole. Clinging to this, he cut a slit in the brown dome overhead. He capped the light box and put it away, then thrust himself out into the breathing night again. Around him, the topmost branches of the tree lifted themselves against a sky that seemed almost close enough to touch. Thorinn leaped to the nearest branch and began to climb. As he drifted upward, he could see that the topmost branches did indeed touch the sky, and some disappeared into it. Now the pure green was close overhead. Squinting against it, he put up a hand and felt the moss cool and moist. He pulled off handfuls and stuffed them into his wallet. In the hole he had made, he felt a matted, fibrous substance like coarse woven straw. He could force his fingers through it, but when he tried to pull a hank of it free, it resisted. It was all tangled together like the stalks of last season's grass. The branch trembled. He looked down and saw gray shapes leaping toward him. More were erupting from the dome below. He almost rose without thinking, gripped the sky with one hand, and swung himself out. He probed through the moss for another grip, swung again. A thrown stick went past him, struck the sky, and spun silently into the void. He looked back. The demons had clustered at the end of the branch, which, bending under their weight, had led them ells short of the sky. Another stick slid into the moss with a tearing sound. Feeling lightheaded, Thorinn plucked it out and threw it back. From a little distance he looked back again. The demons were still clustered on the branch. He moved further away, having an impulse to get clear of the tree, but could he survive a drop to the ground? While he hesitated, looking about him, he noticed a dark line in the sky not far ahead. He set out toward it. As he approached, the line expanded slowly to a narrow oval. When he was almost there, he turned and looked back again. 2 demons were hanging under the sky, and as he watched, another leaped up. They came swinging toward him, and now he could see their eyes glinting under the green sky. He tried to move faster, his fingers slipped, and he almost fell. In his mind, the sky blazed, his breath caught. He gaped with excitement. Here was the opening, a hole in the sky 3 spans wide. Hanging beside it, Thornton plunged his free hand into the wallet, found the light box, and pushed the cap off with his thumb. Made sure that it was the broken end, the lighted one. He drew it out and aimed the light beam in the faces of the demons, saw their eyes clench and their bellies contract. Then he jammed the open end of the box into the sky. Brightness exploded around him. Blinking, dazzled, he looked down and saw the treetops green in the daylight. A hurrying shadow flickered at the edge of his vision and was gone. Shrieks echoed below the treetops. The demons hung from the sky, unable to move. Thornton turned. The shaft was beside him, and with the disc of brown metal at the top. He reached up, felt the shield rotate under his fingers. The opening came into view, an eye of darkness expanding until it filled the circle. Thornton leaped up, blood drumming in his ears. He had just enough strength to pull himself through and roll aside in the darkness. The floor was as soft as goose down. He slept and woke to drink from the magic jug and then slept again. That's the end of section 5.